Cologne with 4711 echt Königwasser.
The tingle that makes your whole world come alive. 4711.
Hello chaps, and welcome back to The Chap's Guide, the channel where we talk about men's grooming, style, self-development and a number of other things that will help you on your journey to being the best chap that you can be. Now today's a product review, and particularly I'm talking about a fragrance because I love fragrances. They make life a far more sensorily enjoyable experience. And the fragrance I'm going to talk about today is this little chap on the table here, and that's 4711, the original Eau De Cologne. And as ever, when I talk about any product, I like to delve into its heritage, because for me, I'm one of those people who buy into the backstory. It becomes part of the reason why I want to own something and use something. And with Eau De Cologne, it has a fantastic history. In fact, that history started way back in the late 18th century, when a chap called Johann Maria Farina created this fragrance in his new hometown of Cologne in Germany. Now he was an Italian chap, yet because he created this fragrance in Cologne, he wanted to name it in honour of the town which was his new home. So he called it Eau De Cologne. Now Eau De Cologne of course means water from Cologne, hence why 4711 is permitted to use the term the original Eau De Cologne in its marketing terminology around this product. And this product's been on sale, been around since 1799. So it's got this remarkable history going way back, and it is an interesting product to talk about. Now, since in that intervening period, 4711 has been continuously made at that same location in Cologne, and in fact the original property it was made in, number 4711, is now something of a museum dedicated to this cologne. Hence why we call everything cologne. Yeah? Now you understand where the term cologne comes from. And it's largely unchanged, although its exact ingredients have remained something of a secret over the many years. Now the product line today is made by the German company Mora & Wirtz. Although over the years it's been owned by a number of different companies. It's changed hands many times. It's been owned by Procter & Gamble prior to Mora & Wirtz. But now it's owned by a German company, Mora & Wirtz, and they also have tabak in their stable of products. So a proper, honest to goodness, German quality company. And 4711 is, you know, one of their better known product lines, to be fair. Now, what can I tell you about a bit more of the history of 4711? It's largely unchanged, and it's beloved in Germany by, and all over the world of course, by people who enjoy this type of cologne. Historically, you'll have seen it in, you know, various other platforms of the media. So for instance, it appeared in the Truman Capote book Breakfast at Tiffany's. It was used and referenced in the literary work by Holly Golightly, the female protagonist. And in its history also, it's been issued by the German state during the Second World War. This cologne was actually issued to submariners in the U-boat service because they were away at sea, often in extremely cramped conditions, with very limited opportunities to wash and to pay attention to personal hygiene. To help with the unpleasantries of that situation, Germany issued 4711 to all the submariners in the Kriegsmarine, the German submarine service, so that they would be a little more fragrant smelling whilst they were working, living cheek to jowl with each other. However, it's known that not many of them actually used the product. They became so accustomed to their own stench that they used to bring them home and give them to gifts to their loved ones. And through its time, history, 4711, as many of the original colognes were, is actually a unisex product. It's not specifically for men. It is perhaps probably more used by men in the modern era, but certainly over the passage of its history, it has been considered to be a unisex product. Now, I've had this over the years, off and on. I know I've had a bottle in the past, and I purchased this particular bottle a few months ago because I was looking to expand my horizons when it came to the fragrance world. And I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I couldn't remember the last bottle I bought. I remember it was fairly pleasant smelling, but that was about it. But having perhaps educated my senses now around colognes and men's fragrance, I was pleasantly surprised when I purchased this. So what can I tell you about the product itself? Well, it's all in the smell, isn't it? So let's start with that. And let's get a bit of it out. Now, it comes in a variety of different size bottles, much smaller, much larger than this. But this, I believe, is a 300 milliliter bottle. Indeed it is. And the first thing you note when you sense it is, and I'll put a little bit on the back of my hand, it doesn't come in an atomizer for a start. It's a splash bottle, so one has to be quite careful, and it flows rather freely. So you'll end up wearing half of it if you're not very careful, but okay, so let's enjoy that fragrance for a moment. Let it go to work. And I've smelled this many times, of course, so I can give you some of my thoughts from experience. In the first instance, the top end, or the top notes of the fragrance, they're very much citrusy. This is a citrus, totally citrus imbued fragrance. It certainly smells of lime, of lemon, a little bit of orange, citrus from one end to the other, there's no doubt about that. Maybe just, a little bit of vanilla there as well, giving it an element of sweetness. It's got a slight sweet tang to me, but citrus is the overwhelming pop. When we get into the middle notes, we will note that it has a certain florality to it, a little bit of what I would describe as perhaps a rose fragrance, a little bit of a rose going on there, but a jasmine perhaps, but still overwhelmingly citrusy. And without a doubt, my first thoughts of it are it smells very clean, it smells very fresh, and it is very light. It's a very light fragrance, quite subtle, not at all overwhelming. When you get down to the base, you do get a little bit of vetiver perhaps, and certainly a tiny bit of woodiness. I would describe it as a faint fragrance of perhaps cedar and sandalwood, but that's not overwhelming at all. For me, very much a citrus aromatic fragrance is what you get with 4711. And for that, it's quite well suited to the warmer parts of the year. As I say, it's a very light fragrance, almost discreet and not particularly long lasting. So in the summertime, where you perhaps don't want a thick muggy fragrance hanging over you, this would be an ideal fragrance for light, fresh smelling occasions where you just want to lighten yourself up and feel quite clean. What else can I tell you? Well, because, as I say, it tends to lend itself more to the summer months. And how would I describe, who do I think would be attracted to this when it comes to the age range? Well, I would definitely say the older rather than the younger. This is a very light fragrance. And for me, younger people tend to be more drawn, as I was as a younger man, to much more powerful fragrances, which are perhaps more brutal in nature and announce themselves. As you're young, you're brash, and so are the fragrances you tend to choose. This one, a polar opposite to that. It's a quiet fragrance. It is a subtle and discreet fragrance, which is quite pleasing rather than, an assault upon the olfactory senses. So, perhaps because of that, more suited to people in later life. I would go as far as to say 40 plus. Of course, that's not to say that people who are younger, who enjoy this fragrance, cannot wear it. Perhaps from the age of 30, you may be drawn to it, but I wouldn't really expect to find anybody wearing this who is younger than that. What time of day would I wear this? Well, I think in reality, it's a daytime fragrance because it's quite light, because it's quite easily worn in any situation. It's very much office appropriate. You don't want to wear an overwhelming fragrance if you're going to be working in close proximity to other people, because you don't want to, be the cause of a sickly fumes hanging around you. This will never do that. So it's very appropriate for most situations where you might find yourself close up to people, where you don't want to offend their senses. And for that reason, I would say you could wear this in the daytime to work. I wouldn't wear it to a special occasion. For me, when I go out to an evening, perhaps when I'm dressing up, going to the opera, I often say the opera, I've never been to the opera, but trying to appear sophisticated here. But if you were in the habit of going to the opera or to an evening event, I like to wear something which boosts my mood and heightens my senses. This doesn't do that. This is kind of that toning down, quite pleasant background odour. So this is not an occasion fragrance for me at all. That's fair to say. And lending on from that, is it a particularly masculine fragrance? I would say absolutely not. This is for somebody who's perhaps comfortable with this, you know, with their masculinity. You don't need a strong alpha fragrance to empower you. This is something, as I say, as I've said throughout, very light fragrance, just hangs there in the background. It's not announcing you in the room. This particular one is an Eau De Cologne. So, and I'm not even sure if it comes in any more powerful a concentration than Eau De Cologne. Potentially it may come in Eau de Toilette, but Eau De Cologne certainly very mild, you know, not particularly high potency, but definitely, you know, not something which I would wear, I would say is particularly masculine in nature. As I've said, easily crosses the line into a unisex fragrance. A female could quite easily wear this and it wouldn't be out of place at all. What about its projection, its radiation, its sillage? Well, I would say not very good, in a positive way. Now, as I've said, this is a fragrance which doesn't emanate around you like a bubble of scent. This is something which, as I say, is very lightly fragrance. Subtle is the word for this stuff. And as a result, you don't leave a great trail of fumes when you walk around with people, you know, thinking, what the hell is that smell? This will never do that. It's got a very light radiation. And actually, when you put it on, its active sort of radiation stage, its projection stage, will be short. I would say, you know, within an hour, and it will have died off and it will not be particularly active on your skin. So on the sliding scale, this is definitely down towards the low end of the radiation stage. And as I say, longevity, not very long. It's only going to last 1 to 2 hours active on your skin. So if you put it on in the morning and you expect it to be active in the afternoon, you will need to reapply. Certainly if you do intend to wear this out to the evening, you would need to reapply because it's not going to be working for you 6 hours after you've applied it. Given that this is an Eau De Cologne, you would probably expect that, but on the Eau De Cologne world, I would say this is towards the weaker end. The bottle, as you can see, is extremely traditional in nature, and it is I know I obviously haven't seen the original bottles from 1799, but I imagine this hasn't strayed too far from the original. Very traditional bottle. As I say, it's a splash rather than an atomizer, so you do have to be careful in the application, and very simple but stylish. And we're on the, you know, the colours which they use in the marketing. It's this beautiful turquoise colour with the blue accents, so it's pleasing on the eye. But it tells you exactly what it is when you see this. It's a traditional classic cologne. Same goes for the other marketing products. Here's the box that it came in, this particular 300 milliliter bottle. And it, you know, draws heavily on that turquoise and gold accents. Also in the range, it's worth discussing the range. There are other products available other than just the cologne itself. And the only one which I've delved into is their body wash or their shower gel, whatever you want to call it. It's a standard shower gel, it's nothing special. It has a fragrance which is closely reminiscent to the cologne. So, you know, if you want to layer your fragrances and you wish to, you know, start that off with the application of your body wash, this would be a good way of doing it. So, you know, they do mirror each other, but you know, is it worth it? Possibly not. The value proposition here is something which is a definite winner with 4711. This is extremely modestly priced, and this bottle here, 300 millilitres, I believe costs sub 15 British pounds. So very inexpensive. For the quantity that you get quite a lot of bang for your buck. Perhaps given the fact that it's not particularly a powerful fragrance. And in fact, I've even heard, you know, I'm filming this towards the tail end of the COVID-19 virus situation in England. I've heard of people who say they buy this stuff and they carry it around as a hand sanitizer, because obviously a lot of its natural ingredient is alcohol, so it will act as a sanitizer. And yeah, I've heard of people saying that this is so modestly priced, they will use it and carry it around as a hand sanitizer. So it has more than one use indeed. From the value side, I mean, the body wash is also just, I think it was £3 or £4. So if you do like curating a range of fragrances which all match, you know, this is a very good way of doing that, and a very modestly priced product. What have other people said about it? So I've been wearing this for a few months, and you know, I've elicited comments from perhaps my wife. I've asked what she thinks of it, and she's been very positive about this fragrance. I think that would be replicated by most people. This is a fragrance which would have difficulty offending anybody. Not because it's neutral in nature, but because it's just that catch-all fragrance that I think human beings like. It's something which smells fresh, it smells clean, it's got that citrusy undertone to it, which I think just is a general appealing fragrance for people of all genders and of all ages. So there we go. So what are my personal observations, and in summary? I would say this is a very subtle fragrance, which is, I like it. Now, I don't say I like everything. There have been products which I've reviewed which I positively haven't engaged with. But 4711 is something which I think you would have difficulty in not liking. The way I use it, I do use it as an aftershave, particularly where I don't want to be smelling quite heavily of a fragrance throughout the day. So I want something which is light in nature. Or if I'm, you know, if you've got a headache and you don't want something which is quite sickly, which is going to aggravate your senses, 4711 is just the thing you may need. I often, and I do use it on a daily basis, so when I've come out of the shower, I often rub this in my hands, rub it on the back of my neck, perhaps around my chest. Because it's so light and it's not long lasting, it just enlivens me up a bit when I've had a shower, rather than, you know, using it as my main fragrance. This is not something I think you'll find you'd use as a signature fragrance. It doesn't have that punch. It simply doesn't have the presence which people would typically go for in a signature fragrance. Now, my own journey with this starts back probably, God, 30 years ago. I used to live in Germany, and I used to work in a German place of work, and we had some German drivers who worked for us, and there was this one chap called Otto. It's not a stereotypical name. Otto, his name was, and every morning Otto was one of the first guys who came into the workplace, and bizarrely, he was quite an older man. He was certainly over 60, and a very dapper dressed fellow, and he always used to bring a copy of the daily newspaper in Germany. It was called Bild, or that's certainly what he read anyway, B-I-L-D. And it was a bit of a tabloid paper, and he used to be the first guy in. He had the most rudimentary English skills, and I had extremely limited German language skills, so we had difficulty in communicating, but he used to hand me the newspaper every morning when he came in, and I'd sit through it, read it for a little bit, look at the pictures, to be honest, because I couldn't understand the words, hand it back, and that was a kind of thing that we had every day when our paths crossed. But I remember he always wore 4711, and obviously he just got up, had a shower, put this on, came into work. It was very, you know, it was about a 6 o'clock start, and he had this emanating fragrance of freshness, and it comes flooding back to me now. The guy must be long dead now, but I still remember him through that association of 4711, and I think it fulfills that role in Germany. 4711 is that inexpensive, volume produced product which is, you know, accessible to everybody because of its price point and its lack of offensiveness in the way that it smells. So there we go. I would say I actually didn't have this in my collection until very recently. I have had it in the past, but it had certainly not been in my collection for over probably a decade. Now I've reconnected with it. I now use it every day after I've had a shower in the evening to sit down and relax, perhaps when I'm sitting around watching the TV, and I want that fresh, clean smell rather than, you know, a signature fragrance. That for me is the position which 4711 fulfills. And at that price point, why not give it a try? You're not going to have invested, you know, poorly, whatever happens. So there we go. That is my review of the original Eau De Cologne 4711. If you have enjoyed it, I would ask you to please give us a thumbs up, and I would encourage you to join our community here at the Chaps Guide by clicking that subscribe button. That way you won't miss any of the future reviews or other articles that we do on a vast array of other men's activities, products, things like that. Until the next time we meet, take care of yourselves, smell well, look stylish, and I'll see you very soon.